Hi, this is Jim Shantz with PMI Elevation Property Management Inc. And today we're going to talk about the elements of a lease. There are several things that are going to be required of you as a landlord when you enter into a lease agreement with a tenant. Essentially, you're conveying the rights and use of that property to somebody else. So there's several different ways to do it. There's multiple different types of leases. There's going to be your month-to-month lease, and there's going to be a fixed term lease. Most of the leases that I've entered into in my career, not most, all of them have been a fixed term, in which typically it's going to be either 6 months to a year or even longer. We've done 18 months lease. If the property becomes vacant in January, we don't want to rent the property again in January, so we'll do an 18-month lease. So all of that, as long as the term is specified in the lease, is legal. You can have a lease as long as you want, up to 99 years, or as short as you want. If the lease is over 1 year, it is required to be written. So that is Colorado law, that anything over a year has to be written down to be valid. Another part of the lease is going to be you have to name the parties, who's on the lease. So you want anyone over the age of 18 who lives in the property to be on that lease. Even if they're going to be there only for a month during the summers to visit mom and dad, or however that's going to work out. If someone's going to be moving into your property, you're going to want them on the lease. That means they're going to be adhered to all the terms and conditions, restrictions, all those things that you have in your lease agreement. You want to make sure that every occupant in your home is held to that same standard. There must be consideration in the lease to be valid. Essentially, the tenant is getting something, and you, the landlord or owner or the property manager, you're getting something. So that's usually payment, a payment of rent. They get the property, they get the conveyance of the property, you get payment for that. So that is another element. It's a good idea to have the description of the property. Be as descriptive as possible. If you're only giving them the inside of the house to rent and not the front porch or the front yard or backyard, you'll need to note that in the lease, because just putting an address sometimes doesn't cover all of the items that are going to be in that lease. If you're not letting them use the garage or specific parts of the property, you need to note that in the contract. You're going to note all the conditions and exceptions in the lease. If there's something that you're not including, you'll need to also convey that in the lease document. Have it written so that all parties know what is included and not included in your lease agreement. Another important part, if your lease is over a year, we've already said it's required to be in writing. It also requires signatures. I know it sounds silly, like, oh, who wouldn't sign a contract? But it's a required element of the contract. In this case, the landlord, the lessor, they need to sign it. For the lessee, the tenant moving into the property, they could also take ownership by taking possession. So we discussed that a signature is needed on the contract. Now, sometimes only the owner or the landlord or the property manager will sign the contract, and then the tenant doesn't, but they take possession. That action of moving into the property is their agreement with the contract. So while it's not ideal, that will cover you if they didn't sign the contract. That is them agreeing to your terms and conditions. So be aware of that. It's better to get them to sign. We do that through DocuSign. We have them sign electronically, and that way we hand them the keys after they've paid the security deposit, first month's rent, any other fees that are due up front, transfer utilities into their name. Those things happen, and there's going to be a signature on that lease, at least for PMI Elevation. And the other thing is you have to give them a copy of the lease agreement. If you both are entering into that lease, you get a copy and they should have a copy. So you have to deliver that contract to the tenant or make it available for them to access later if they want to reference it to see what you agreed to and what you have not agreed to. And then an important caveat is some of the addendums to the contract, you may have extra things, rules about the property. If it's a multifamily, you might have specific things that are not addressed in a single family lease. Another item to consider is a lead-based paint disclosure. If the house was built before 1978, you need to disclose that to the tenant that there may be the potential of lead in the property. That is required to be a part of the lease agreement. We use a Colorado attorney drafted lease agreement with all of our tenants and clients. That way each party is protected and well within the rules and regulations and laws within the state of Colorado and some of the cities with the Metro Denver area. So this is clearly not going to be all inclusive. You can add or remove items in your lease agreement that you want to have in there. If you want no smoking, those kind of things. But here's going to be a list of items that you might want to consider to have in your lease agreement when you're drafting it. So thanks for taking the time today to watch this video. Hopefully it's been helpful for you in your investment journey. If you are starting out, feel free to reach out to us with any questions or clarifications you may have. As always, please subscribe to our channel and visit us at PMIElevation.com, where we're constantly updating market conditions within Metro Denver and Colorado as a whole, and helping landlords be successful in property management.